Welcome to Fat Boyz Outdoors, brought to you by Whisker Sticks LED lights. They are pretty much limited by the user's imagination. Find them on Facebook.
Hey guys, Paul Ragsdale here with Tim Fat Boyz, and I got Brad Dyer with me. I guess that's how you pronounce it.
That's right.
Okay. And we're going to talk about a little bit of his background, what he's done, and where he is, and why he is where he is. So you were telling me here a little bit before recording that you was a forestry agent for forestry.
Yeah, I did. I went to University of Georgia, graduated with a forestry degree, and then I spent several years working for the corporate side over in Savannah, and then moved to Prattville, Alabama, and then actually did a brief stint with Caterpillar up in Peoria, and then ended up back down south in the timber business again. And then in 2008, kind of right before the recession hit, though, I switched and went into more utility vegetation management, and moved back over to Georgia, and now work keeping transmission lines cleared and doing the clearing for utility work.
Yeah, you was telling me you like to catch fish. Is there what have you fished for in the past, and what's your favorite fish now?
Well, I even as a kid, I said I remember I went to fishing camp down on Lake Seminole, Jack Wingate's Lunker Lodge, and just always had that passion as a child. Loved to fish and went down and did that. And I was probably more like everyone else. Early on, I was a bass fisherman and enjoyed chasing those. And then as I got older, I used to hunt quite a bit too. And probably about 6 years ago, I just decided I like catching big fish, and I like fishing with live bait. So I pretty much exclusively went after chasing catfish, and then kind of found out through doing that especially in the springtime when the stripers runs on, I've enjoyed catching some stripers too, and gotten into that. But that's pretty much all I do now. Is I'm a year-round cat fisherman, and certain times of the year I'll go after some stripers. They're a lot of fun in the river. But it's just that's my stress relief. That's how I relax. Just love to get out on the water. I'm the kind of, I'll leave in the dark and come home in the dark. I'll fish all day. I just it's a peaceful way. I don't tournament fish. I do it for fun, and just a good way I found to relax.
Yeah, and that's the way. My first show that I did was going strictly towards the channel cat, not the channel catfishing, but the tournament fishing, and that's something that I didn't do a lot of, so I didn't really have a passion in it, and I let some other people take over with it. And then when I came back, I said I was gonna go for the common man. Hang on a minute. Mr. Cat, I bet he won't come in this room again. So anyway, I got to go back here a little bit. So I wanted to go more in just the common man catfishing. So that was the direction that I went, and that's the direction that I am at. But Brad, what is the catfish that you fish for, and what is your personal best, if you keep track of that?
Yeah, well, I primarily live in Georgia. I'm in a town called Sharpsburg, so I'm southwest of Atlanta, and my closest place to fish is West Point Lake, and I primarily fish the Chattahoochee River that feeds into West Point. Down there, I look at it. I'll fish for all three species. I mean, I'll fish for blues, flatheads, channels.
I wasn't
Just
sure
kind
if
of,
they had everyone down there or not. So,
yeah, it just depends on the time of year that it is. So, I mean, in fact, I went to fish the Tennessee River outside of Chattanooga here about a month ago in May. It's about 2.5 hours from me one way, but like down on West Point, our lake record flathead is 37 pounds, 14 ounces. And our lake record blue, I believe, is 29 pounds, 6 ounces. So, not huge fish, but, I look at it, I've gotten to the point where I can consistently, my biggest flathead on rod and reel is 37 pounds, 4 ounces. And my biggest blue that I pulled out is 31 pounds, 2 ounces. So, I broke 30 on a blue twice down there, but, I can consistently catch fish that are in the upper range of what that lake has to offer. But, I kind of realize if I'm going to get into some bigger fish, I'm going to have to travel a little farther. So that's what I think my plans are in this coming year is I'm going to be heading up to Chattanooga, spend a little time on the Tennessee on Nickajack and Chickamauga. But, my biggest thing is time. It's about 40 minutes for me to run down to where I put in on the Chattahoochee. And, I've got 3 kids and a family here. And just, that's why I say probably the toughest thing is finding time to fish. I try to go once a week. It doesn't always work out, but that's why I run to West Point and Chattahoochee so much because it's closest. But, and that's the other part is, I fish that river and lake enough where, depending on what weather is and different time of year, I pretty much got that lake patterned down and kind of ready to move on to another challenge, trying out the Tennessee. So where I fish at on the Chattahoochee, it's, I primarily anchor fish. We just have a ton of timber in in that river bottom on those ledges. And it makes drifting real hard to do. I've tried it, had a little bit of success at it, but I spend more time being hung, and that's what, so that's where I'll do some different things while I'm anchoring. I mean, sometimes I do some live line, and mostly I'm Carolina rigged. But again, we've got a lot of timber in the river, but same time we got a lot of fish too. So it's something that normally when I go out, again, that's why I spend all day fishing because it offers a good variety of fish. And, we've got some cat fishermen down there that I see, time and time again, but it is, again, it's something that not the volume of people chasing cats down there, again, gives us a good population. I'm primarily a CPR fisherman, and, that's why I say when I want some catfish to eat, I'll go chase some channel cats. But again, it's been a good lake to me, but that's the thing I'm going to start doing different this next year is doing a little venture out to some new waters.
yeah, it's something that, as far as CPR goes, these people, most of them, hang on. Hey, I'm in the middle of an interview. I'm going to call you back.
Okay.
Bye. That's her nickname, Queen Bitch. She chose it, not me. But, see, let me go back here a little bit. And these CPR guys, some of them, they just don't have a sense of humor. I didn't know what CPR was at the time. And Lyle Stokes took me under his wing and talked about conservation and all that. But one day they were talking about CPR and catfish, and I was catch, photo, and refrigerate, and they come unglued, man. No sense of humor whatsoever. But I didn't make that mistake again. Some of these guys are hardcore and on the hardcore CPR. And now I don't hardly keep anything to eat unless it's farm raised. But just too high mercury levels here around the St. Louis area. But when I was talking to you a while ago, you said something that you mainly use live bait. Can you explain to me why you use the live bait and you prefer it over the other?
Yeah, I just in my time fishing, I pretty much, as far as my success rate, I'm on a lake where we've got threadfin shad and gizzard shad. There's no skipjack in that section of the river on West Point. But and then I'll also, I'll take, some waxworms with me and, catch some brim if I'm flathead fishing. But that's another part of it is, figuring out when you hit the water every morning, that's the first thing you got to do is fill the bait tank up. So, I mean, it's just as important. I've sat there and tried to tell folks, you got to learn how to pattern shad and with the different water conditions. And, I've just, to me, it's hands down, fresh bait is so much better than frozen.
Do
And it's hard to freeze
with
gizzard shad or threadfin.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I just, I haven't had, I don't like to me, when you freeze a gizzard shad, they come out mushy and just don't stay on the hook as well. And, that's something I'll usually, with my setup, I'm usually fishing 8 rods and I'll start off the day 4 with live bait on them and 4 with cut bait and see what the fish like that time of year. I mean, I'm one of the ones, I have probably caught more flatheads on cut bait than I have live bait. You hear a lot of folks, oh, you got to have live bait for a flathead. I've caught plenty of them on live brim or live gizzard shad, but I've probably caught more on cut bait than I have live.
Do you guys have any problems with the Asian carp there?
No, we don't have any Asian carp in the
You
river
all want
system.
some? We can give you a whole bunch of them.
I don't know. I've seen some videos. I'm not too much into the fish flying in the boat as you're riding down the river.
Yeah, Missouri, Mississippi's the worst right now. And I heard that they're almost up into the Great Lakes, and that's a waste of habitat if they get in there. But yeah, that I was kind of wondering if you had problems with Asian carp and stuff over there. A lot of us, if we get our hands on them, the law is we have to kill them on contact, and if you get caught with a live one in your boat, you're getting a ticket. And that's the way they do it. And a lot of people are using for cut bait, and they work just as good, just not as oily.
Yeah.
But
I was going to drop back real quick. When you were talking about CPR, again, when I want to eat fish, I'm going to keep smaller fish under 5 pounds to eat. But, it was probably 4 years ago that right around Christmas time, my son was home from college and he wanted to take some catfish back to have a big fish fry with his buddy. And so it was, I think it was 3 days before Christmas. I was out there and I probably had about 80 pounds in the cooler and pulled back up to the dock. And there was a young boy, probably I'd say 10, 11 years old on the dock with his father or grandfather. And they were sitting there fishing. And, he asked me, he said, do you have any luck today? And I told him it was a decent day. And he sat there and he shook his head and he said, well, we're fishing for Christmas dinner and all we got is one brim. Grandma's not going to be very happy with us. And so, I told them, I saw they had several 5-gallon buckets. I said, go grab those buckets. I said, Grandma was in luck. And I loaded them up with a bunch of catfish, as much as those buckets would hold. And, that grandfather, he just gave me a nod and said, thank you. And, I remember walking back to the truck. I said, that boy was so excited. And he was, sitting there hollering at his grandpa that, it was going to be a great Christmas. And so,
yeah,
that's probably this time of year I try to do it. And I did it here
he went back.
I did it last week.
He caught what he did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, last week, I mean, I was fishing, again, it was Friday. Last Friday I was fishing. There was 2 guys on the bank and they were older gentlemen, and they were there when I pulled up to that hole, and where the fish were, they were far enough off they couldn't reach them. And I caught a triple right there, and the guys were watching. Well, I could hear one guy comment, we've been here all morning, ain't caught a fish or whatever. And I hollered over to him. I said, "Hey, you guys want some fish?" And I took them those 3 fish, and they were as grateful as can be. So that's probably this time of year, and that's what I put a post out there on one of the catfish forums. I said, "Hey guys, if you boat fishing and you have success this time of year, a lot of the folks on the bank ain't quite as lucky, so that's what I try to do around Christmas and New Year's, is make sure I keep some fish. So I've never had it where I pull back into the dock and I got somebody on the bank that ain't looking, hadn't quite had the luck they're looking for. So that's just, like I say, it's my Christmas tradition. I try to keep some fish and keep some folks. I'm out there fishing for fun. Some folks are out there fishing for food, and just keeping that in mind. So that's kind of one of the things I like to do around this time of year.
Yeah, I think it's funny. You know as well as I do, they got home, they say, "Hey, look what I caught."
Well, it's cracked me up because I've seen that same young boy back at the ramp several times, and as I'm pulling in, he yells, "Hey, here comes the catfish man."
So anyway, I had another question on my mind, and I can't think of it for nothing. And that's the part of being able to edit things out. Oh, yeah. Hang on here. I'll cue it up. Okay, so what kind of poles do you use? What kind of reels do you use? Is there anything particular over the other?
I'd probably come back and say Knock
it off.
I've got a Duke's mixer. I'd probably say I like the Ripping Lips 7'6" medium heavy the best. I've got some Meat Hunter customs that I like. And then I also like the Eagle Claw, Cat Claw. Again, when I'm down in a region where most of my fish are going to be 30 pounds or less, that's probably the one thing I've gone back to is I'd rather have a better fight than be fishing with such a tank of a rig that you can reel them straight in with not too no finesse to it at all. So but I'm a circle hook fisherman. I mainly use 7/0 circle hooks, probably my favorite, because I look at it a bunch. Most of the shad I catch are 6 to 7 inch range, and I always catch some bigger gizzard shad that I'll cut. But I'll use 65-pound braid with a 50-pound mono leader, anywhere from 18 to 36 inches, and
What
most of
about big baits?
now what?
What about big baits? Do you use big baits? Like
Yeah, I use a double rig set. It more depends the time of the year, because like even here recently, I've had to downsize the bait, and I've probably found a 4 to 6 inch whole shad is way out producing the cut bait bite on it right now. So again, I think it kind of depends on the time of year. Now in the springtime, I'll go back with bigger baits. Sometimes, when I'm getting into some of these gizzard shad that are 10, 12 inches, I'll use a double hook rig on those. Hey, Matt. I'll use a double hook rig on some of those, but again, primarily it'll be a single hook, 7/0 circle hook on a Carolina rig.
Okay. All right, we're getting ready to close out. If you had any advice to give a rookie, what would be the first and foremost advice you'd give him?
I'd probably sit there and say, just about everybody today at least has a smartphone. And if you even, if you don't have a fish finder that has a GPS on it, You can download that Navonics app on your phone.
Yeah, I got
But
that.
knowing the depth of the water and your contour where you're fishing, I think is super important because again, once you figure out that pattern where those fish are holding, being able to find that same topographic pattern in another section, I think, just saves a lot of time, helps, finding those fish that much quicker. So, you know, I started out with more of a John boat style, and now I've got a center console and I've got things rigged up the way I want it. But you don't have to run out there and you know spend a fortune to get into this sport. It's something I think again, that's why I look at some of these when I talk about these bank fishermen. If they knew the depth they were throwing into sometimes, or if they realized, hey, if they just went a quarter mile down the bank, they were in a much deeper section. That's what I'd sit there and say is that, knowing your water depth and your topography is going to help you a bunch. For someone starting out, that's probably the most critical thing. And then they'll start learning those patterns on what time of year, what type of flow you got, where those fish are holding.
Hush. Guess I'm gonna have to let my dogs out. All right. Well, stay there with me for a little bit, and I'm gonna go ahead and stop the broadcast here. And hang on.
Knock it off.
All right. Well, I'm gonna cut the broadcast. Stay with me here a couple of seconds, and we'll have a chit chat.